Hi, welcome back. Today we shall be reading Chapter 48, The Great Debate. The ones amongst Shiva's brigade who were seeking vengeance got a boost the next morning. Against all expectations, Bhagirath sailed in at the head of the entire army of 250,000 troops. The Ayodhyan prince had been worried about what would happen to his lord if the Meluhans tried some trickery at Devagiri. He had marched the troops all the way from Lothal to the Saraswati, through the broad Meluhan highways without a halt, breaking only for brief food breaks and minuscule rest sessions. At the Saraswati, he had commandeered as many merchant ships as possible and raced up the great river to Devagiri. "Oh Lord Ram!" whispered a stunned Bhagirath. Gopal had just told Bhagirath about what had occurred at Devagiri and the brutal manner in which Sati had been killed. "Where is the princess's body?" asked Chinnardhwaj, tears welling up in his eyes. "In the Peace Conference building," said Gopal. "The Lord Neelkant is with her. He hasn't moved from there in the last 24 hours. He hasn't eaten, he hasn't spoken. He's just sitting there, holding Princess Sati's body." Chandraketu looked up at the sky. He turned around and wiped away a tear. Those pearls of emotion were signs of weakness in a Kshatriya. "We will kill every single one of those bastards," growled Bhagirath, his knuckles whitening on his clenched fists. "We will obliterate the entire city. There will be no trace left of this place. They have hurt our living god." "Prince Bhagirath," said Gopal, his palms open in supplication, "we cannot punish the entire city. We must keep a clear head. We should only punish those who are responsible for this assassination. We should destroy the Somras factory. We must leave the rest unharmed. That is the right thing to do." "Forgive me, great Vasudev," interrupted Chandraketu, "but some crimes are so terrible that the entire community must be made to pay. They have killed Lady Sati, and in such a brutal manner." "But not everyone came out to kill her. A vast majority was not even aware of what the emperor was up to," argued Gopal. "They could have come out to stop the killing once it had begun, couldn't they?" asked Chandraketu. "Standing by and watching a sin being committed is as bad as committing it oneself. Don't the Vasudevs say this?" "This is an entirely different context, King Chandraketu," said Gopal. "I disagree, Panditji," said Matali, the king of Vaishali. "Devagiri must pay." "I think Lord Gopal is right, King Matali," said Chinnardhwaj, the Lothal governor. "We cannot punish everyone in Devagiri for the sins of a few." "Why am I not surprised to hear this?" asked Matali. "What is that supposed to mean?" asked Chinnardhwaj, stung to the quick. "You're a Meluhan," said Matali. "You will stand up for your people. We are Chandravanshis. We are the ones who are truly loyal to the Neelkant." Chinnardhwaj stepped up close to Matali threateningly. "I rebelled against my own people, against my country's law, against my vows of loyalty to Meluha because I am a follower of the Neelkant. I am loyal to Lord Shiva, and I don't need to prove anything to you." "Calm down, everyone," said Chandraketu, the Branga king. "Let's not forget who the real enemy is." "The real enemy is Devagiri," said Matali. "They did this to Lady Sati, they must be punished. It's as simple as that." "I agree," said Bhagirath. "We should use the Pashupati Astra." Gopal flared with anger. "The Pashupati Astra is not some random arrow that can be fired without any thought, Prince Bhagirath. It will leave total death and devastation behind in this area for centuries to come." "Maybe that is what this place deserves," said Chandraketu. These are Daivi Astras, said an agitated Gopal. They cannot be used casually to settle disputes among men. Lord Shiva is not another man, said Bhagirath. He is divine. He must use the weapon too. We cannot use the Pashupati Astra. That is final, said Gopal. I don't think so, Panditji, said Chandraketu. Lady Sati was a great leader and warrior with the highest moral standards. The Lord Nilkant loved Lady Sati more than I have seen any man love his wife. I am sure Lord Shiva wants vengeance, and frankly, so do we. It's not vengeance that we need, King Chandraketu, said Gopal, but justice. The people who did this to Lady Sati must face justice, but only those who were responsible for this perfidy. Nobody else should be punished, for that would be an even bigger injustice. Yours is the voice of reason, Panditji, said Matali. But this is not the time for reason, this is the time for anger. I don't think the Nilkant will make a decision in anger, said Gopal. Then why don't we ask Lord Shiva? Asked Bhagirath. Let him decide. Kill them all, growled Kali. I want this entire city to burn with every one of its citizens in it. All the commanders of Shiva, including his family members, were seated in a secluded area on the peace conference platform, outside the main building. Brahaspati and Tara had also joined in, but remained mostly silent. The area had been cordoned off by soldiers to prevent anyone from listening in on the deliberations. Gopal had tried to get Shiva to attend, but the Nilkant did not respond to any of his entreaties. He remained alone, within the freezing inner chamber, holding Sati. Queen Kali, argued Gopal, my apologies for disagreeing with you, but we cannot do this. This is morally wrong. Didn't the Meluhans give their word that this is a peace conference? Nobody's supposed to use arms at a peace conference, right? They did something that is very morally wrong. How come you didn't notice that, Panditji? Two wrongs don't make a right. I don't care, said Kali, waving her hand dismissively. Devagiri will be destroyed. They will pay for what they did to my sister. Queen Kali, said Chinardhwaj carefully, I respect you immensely. You are a great woman. You have always fought for justice, but does punishing an entire city for the crimes of a few serve justice? Kali cast him a withering look. I saved your life, Chinardhwaj. I know, your highness. How can I forget that? That is the reason you will do what I tell you to do, interrupted Kali. My sister will be avenged. Chinardhwaj tried to argue. But my sister will be avenged. Chinardhwaj fell silent. Bhagirath was carefully avoiding this discussion. While walking towards the peace conference building, he had learned that his sister, Anandamayi, was in Devagiri. The city would be destroyed, but he had to save his sister first. I agree with Queen Kali, said Chandraketu. Devagiri must be destroyed. We must use the Pashupati Astra. At the mention of the devastating Daivi Astra, Kartik spoke up for the first time. The Astra cannot be used. Gopal looked at Kartik, grateful to have at least one member of the Nilkant's family on his side. Justice will be done, said Kartik. Ma's blood will be avenged, but not with the Pashupati Astra. It cannot be done with that terrible weapon. It must not, agreed Gopal immediately. The Nilkant has given his word to the Vayuputras that he will not use the Pashupati Astra. If that is the case, then we cannot use it, said Bhagirath. Gopal breathed easy, glad to have pulled at least some of them back from the brink. The question remains, how do we give justice to Princess Sati? By killing them all, roared Kali. But is it fair to kill children who had nothing to do with this? Asked Bhagirath. You are assuming, Prince Bhagirath, said Kali, that Meluhans care for their children? Your Highness, said Bhagirath, please try to understand that children who had nothing to do with this crime should not be punished. Fine, said Kali. We will let their children out. And non-combatants as well, said Karthik. Particularly the women, said Bhagirath. We must let them go, but once they are out, we should destroy the entire city. Is there anyone else you would like to save? Asked Kali sarcastically. What about the dogs in Devagiri? Should we lead them out too? Maybe the cockroaches as well? Bhagirath did not respond. Anything he said would only inflame Kali further. Kali cursed. All right, children and non-combatants will be allowed out. Everyone else will remain prisoner in the city, and they will all be killed. Agreed, said Bhagirath. All I'm saying that we should be fair. That is not all there is to it, Prince Bhagirath, erupted Karthik. The Somras is not to be destroyed. My father had been very clear about that. It is only supposed to be taken out of the equation. We do have to destroy the Somras factory, but we also have to ensure that the knowledge of the Somras is not lost. We have to save the scientists and take them to a secret location. They will be a part of the tribe that my father will leave behind. These people will keep the knowledge of the Somras alive. Today, it is evil, but there may come a time in the future when the Somras may be good again. Gopal nodded. Karthik has spoken wisely. This means that even if some of these scientists had something to do with my mother's death, said Karthik, we have to set aside our pain and save them. We have to save them for the sake of India's future. Ganesh glared at Karthik with dagger eyes. Set aside our pain. Karthik became silent. Ganesh was breathing heavily, barely able to keep a hold on his emotions. Don't you feel any anger about Ma's death, any rage, any fury? Dada, what I was trying to say, you always received Ma's love on a platter, from the day you were born. That's why you don't value it. Dada, ask me about the value of a mother's love. Ask me how much you hanker for it when you don't have it. Dada, I loved her too. You know I... Did you see her body, Karthik? Dada, did you? Have you looked at her body? Dada, of course I have. There were 51 wounds on her. I counted them, Karthik, 51. I know. Furious tears were pouring down Ganesh's face. Those bastards must have continued hacking at her even after she was dead. Dada, listen. Ganesh's body was shaking with anger now. Didn't you feel any rage when you saw your mother's mutilated body? Of course I did, Dada, but... What but can there be? She was attacked by many of those Somras worshipping demons simultaneously. It is our duty to avenge her. Our duty. It is the least we can do for the best mother in the world. Dada, she was the best mother. But she taught us to always put the world before ourselves. Ganesh didn't say anything. His long floppy nose had stiffened, like it did on the rare occasions when he was enraged. Karthik spoke softly. Dada, if we were any other family, I would give in to my rage. But we are not. Ganesh looked away, too livid to even respond. We are the family of the Nilkant, said Karthik. We have a responsibility to the world. Responsibility to the world? My parents are my world. Karthik fell silent. Ganesh pointed his finger threateningly towards Karthik. Not one of those Somras worshipping bastards will get out of here alive. Dada, every single one of them will be killed, even if I have to kill them myself. Karthik fell silent. Gopal sighed as he looked at Kali, Ganesh and Karthik. There was too much anger. He couldn't figure out a way to save the Somras scientists from Ganesh and Kali's rage. But at least he had managed to take the conversation away from the dangerous talk of using the Pashupati Astra. And maybe there was still hope that over the next few hours he would convince the Nilkant's family of the necessity of saving the Somras scientists. Shiva had been sitting quietly in the icy tomb, holding Sati's body. His eyes were sunken and expressionless, with no light of hope in them, with no reason to even exist. The blackish-red blotch on his brow was visibly throbbing. He was shivering due to the cold. A single droplet of fluid had escaped from Sati's good eye, now closed, and ran down her face like a tear. There was an unearthly silence in the room, except for the soft hissing of the cold air being pumped in at regular intervals. A sudden sharp noise startled Shiva, perhaps from the bulls harnessed to the Meluhan cooling system. He looked around with cold, emotionless eyes. There was nobody in the chamber. He looked down at his dead wife. He pulled her body close and kissed her gently on her forehead. Then he carefully placed her back on the ice. Caressing her face tenderly, Shiva whispered, "Stay here, Sati. I will be back soon." Shiva jumped off the icy tower and walked up to the door of the inner chamber. As soon as he opened it, Ayurvati stood up, accompanied by her medical team. She had been tending to Nandi and other soldiers for the last 24 hours. "My lord," said Ayurvati, her eyes red and swollen from accumulated misery and lack of sleep. Shiva ignored her and continued walking. Ayurvati looked at Shiva with foreboding and terror. She had never seen the Nilkant's eyes look so hard and remote. He looked like he had gone beyond rage, beyond ruthlessness, beyond insanity. Shiva opened the main door. He heard voices to his right. He turned to see his commanders in deep discussion. Tara was the first to notice him. "Lord Nilkant," said Tara, immediately rising to her feet. Shiva stared at her blankly for a few seconds, then took a deep breath and spoke evenly. "Tara, the Pashupati Astra trunk is in my ship. Bring it here." A panic-stricken Gopal rushed towards Shiva. He knew that Shiva hadn't eaten in 24 hours. He hadn't slept. He had been sitting on top of an inhumanly cold tower. Grief had practically unhinged him. He knew the Nilkant wasn't himself. "My friend, listen to me. Don't make a decision like this in haste." Shiva looked at Gopal, his face frozen. "I know you're angry, Nilkant, but don't do this. I know your good heart. You will repent it." Shiva turned around to walk back into the conference building. Gopal reached out and held Shiva's arm, trying to pull him back. "Shiva," pleaded Gopal, "you have given your word to the Vayuputras. You have given your word to your uncle, Lord Mitra." Shiva gripped Gopal's hand tightly and removed it from his arm. "Shiva, the power of this weapon is terrible and unpredictable," pleaded Gopal, grasping at any argument to stop this tragedy. "Even if the Pashupati Astra's destruction is restricted to the inner circle, any attempt to destroy all 3 platforms of Devagiri will widen this circle. It will not just destroy Devagiri, it will also destroy all of us. Do you really want to kill your entire army, your family and your friends?" "Tell them to leave." Shiva's voice was soft, barely audible. His eyes remained remote and unfocused, staring into space. Gopal paused for a moment, watching Shiva with a glimmer of hope. Should I tell our people to leave with the Pashupati Astra? Shiva did not move. There was no reaction on his face. No. Tell the people of this city to leave. All except those who have protected or made the Somras, and those directly responsible for Sati's death. For when I am done, there will be no more Daksha. There will be no more Somras. There will be no more evil. It will be as if this place, this evil, never existed. Nothing will live here. Nothing will grow here. And no two stones will be left standing upon each other to show that there ever was a Devagiri. It all ends now. Gopal was grateful that at least the innocent people of Devagiri would be saved. But what about Lord Rudra's law banning the use of Daivyastras? Shiva, the Pashupati Astra, whispered Gopal with hope. Shiva stared at Gopal unemotionally and spoke in a voice that was eerily composed. I will burn down this entire world. Gopal stared at Shiva with foreboding. The Nilkant turned around and walked back into the building to his Sati. Tara rose. Where are you going? Whispered Brahaspati. To get the Pashupati Astra, answered Tara softly. You cannot, it will destroy us all. No, it won't. These weapons can be triangulated in such a way that the devastation will remain confined within the city. We will not be affected if we remain more than 5 kilometers away. Tara began to walk away. Brahaspati pulled her back and whispered urgently. What are you doing? You know this is wrong. I feel for Shiva, but the Pashupati Astra? Tara stared at Brahaspati without a hint of doubt in her eyes. Lord Ram's sacred laws have been shamelessly broken. The Nilkant deserves his vengeance. Of course he does, said Brahaspati, meeting her gaze without flinching. But not with the Pashupati Astra. Don't you feel his pain? What kind of friend are you? Tara, I had once considered doing something wrong. I had wanted to assassinate a man who was to duel Sati. Shiva stopped me. He stopped me from taking a sin upon my soul. If I have to be a true friend to him, I will have to stop him from tarnishing his soul. I cannot let him use the Pashupati Astra. His soul is already dead, Brahaspati. It's lying on top of that ice tower, said Tara. I know, but... Tara pulled her hand away from Brahaspati. You expect him to fight in accordance with the laws, when his enemies have not. They have taken everything from him. His life, his soul, his entire reason for existence. He deserves this vengeance.